Welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, founder and CEO of Latitude. This is the podcast where we talk about remarkable guests and their career journeys and exciting paths based on the methodology from Pathfinders, the book. We talk about two main things: the career map, broken out into the 5 different dimensions, the skills, education, achievements, some of those accomplishments, the certifications, and we'll get into some of the fun stuff as well, along with the different positions that people filled along the way. The second piece of it is who helped them get there, those multiple guides, mentors, advisors. We call this a personal board of advisors. You might refer to it as a PBA throughout the session today. We're going to share this on LinkedIn and the other podcasting platforms. So please go on and give a review, give some stars, and add a comment where you see it. The quote for today: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The best time is now. The next time is now. Jesse is a national thought leader in investing in human talent at the intersection of the future of work and learning. And he's an expert in it too, really. Jesse has 15 years of experience in startups, consulting, education, workforce development, leadership, public policy analysis, and nonprofit management. You might say to yourself, Pete, it seems like he's done just about everything. The answer is yes, he pretty much has. Currently, he's working in as the chief executive officer for South Central PA Works, a little bit east of us in Pittsburgh, where we're recording today. But he's focused on the Regional Workforce Development Board, overseeing $15 million in annual federal and state resources that connects talent with opportunity. He serves on the board at the National Associations of Workforce Boards, an advisor to the Philadelphia Federal Reserve Bank as a member of the Economic and Community Advisory Council, and an officer at the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council. So Jesse does workforce every which way you can think about it, say it, spell it. And he's also, I don't know how he has time for this, training for his first ultra marathon. So without further ado, Jesse, welcome up to the stage. And before we get into the you and the story and everything, ultra marathon? What the heck? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, so us runners are all a little odd, right? We're a little quirky, but I think the longer distance you go, the quirkier we get. So I've done a handful of marathons, and I caught the bug, Pete. I really did. Crossed the finish line on my first one. I thought, when can I do this again? So training for my first ultra, and it's got to scare you a little bit, right? It's a little intimidating to run that kind of distance. So
what's that mean? What is an ultra? So I've heard of a 5K, 10K. There's a half marathon, 13 miles, a full marathon for crazy people that want to run 26 miles. And I guess an ultra is more than 26, huh?
It is more than 26. And there are even levels of quirkiness in ultra marathons, right? So you get the 50K, which I think is like 32 miles. Then you get the 50 miler. And then the 100K, which is like 62 miles, and then 100 miles. So I'm starting on the easiest level here, Pete. I'm starting at the 32 miles. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, so it's like I'm going to go run a marathon, and then I'm going to go run a 10K-ish right afterwards or so.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
And for those, just real quick, for those that have run a marathon before, they know that the quote is 20 miles is halfway, right? It's that last 6 miles that is like you hit the wall. Mentally and physically, that last 6 miles is a push. So yeah, we'll see how it all goes. I'll make sure to report, do a little race report with you, Pete.
Yeah, sounds good. When is the race, Jesse?
So I'm aiming for end of November. So I got about a month left.
All right. Good luck. November 2024. So whenever we post this, the race may have concluded. So excited for that one. Jesse, the way we start this off is asking, what'd you want to be whenever you were growing up? Maybe runner was in there. Maybe it was something else. Who knows? But tell us.
Yeah, so the evolution of my career aspirations is probably started wanting to be an astronaut, right? Like probably not the only kid in America that wanted to be an astronaut. Learned pretty quickly though that you put me on a roller coaster or any sort of spinny thing, and I get vertigo pretty quick. So astronaut was out of the question pretty early on, and I'll attribute that, Pete, to my personal board of advisors who steered me to say, Jesse, listen, maybe astronaut's not for you, right? Then it was NBA baller. And basketball, I ended up being okay at it, but didn't have the size or the strength. So that went off the board pretty quickly. And then I read a lot of John Grisham novels as a kid. Like, you imagine 12-year-old Jesse just reading a bunch of John Grisham novels. So I wanted to be a lawyer for a really long time. And that was probably the impetus for high school and college, government and law, international relations type work. But I think that ultimately, Pete, I think kind of stuck with me, kind of that idea of public policy, wanting to make clear arguments and ultimately advocate for those that maybe were less fortunate. So I did kind of hold a piece of the lawyer element in my career aspirations from a kid.
So did you study basketball in college, or running, or astronaut, or pre-law,
Yeah.
or something else?
Yeah. So I think I probably minored in ultimate frisbee in college. Let's just
Oh,
be honest,
nice.
right? So I played a little ultimate frisbee to pass the time. I was a government and legal studies major in college, and I think that was the element too, which was I didn't know, as many people do when they're 18, what exactly they wanted to be.
Right.
The intersection around sort of clear communication, sort of that idea of standing up for those that maybe were less fortunate, and ultimately kind of wanted to do the international relations thing as a lawyer for a long time. I think I learned pretty quick that law school thing wasn't going to be my ballywick. But what was interesting is I still have, I think, some of those general frameworks, clear communication, writing skills. Those were things that I really kind of honed in high school and college that I'm still, reaping the benefits from. And you and I have talked about this a lot. Those that go to school, again, 18 to 22 in that sort of traditional 4-year college, not always doing exactly those things 15, 20 years later. But I think what I can do is I can look back at some of the advice that my dad gave me,
Yeah.
learn how to love learning, be a lifelong learner, be adaptable and resilient, communicate well, right? Being able to communicate ideas broadly, no matter what field you're in, will be effective. And to kind of be hungry and humble. And I think that was the big takeaway that I had in college, on the backdrop of government and sort of international relations work. But those are the lifelong learning lessons I think that I took the most from those college days.
And you just answered the question that we usually ask of not just what you put into your toolbox, but what really stayed into your toolbox. And I particularly love the one you stay always learning, in sponge mode, as I like to refer to it. You're always communicating effectively, getting better at those skills, and staying humble and hungry throughout. So then, did your first job take you to the NBA and you got back onto the basketball court, or you stayed more with ultimate frisbee there?
So it's a quick little side tangent. So we have 4 young kids.
Yeah.
My second oldest is 7, just played his first year of basketball. So came back from basketball
Let's
practice.
go.
Right, this is back earlier in the winter. First practice, and we were shooting around before and after, right? And so we were driving home, and I was like, "Hey, Caleb, how was practice?" He was good. And then all of a sudden, he stopped himself and he said, "Dad, I just think it's so strange that you weren't drafted in the NBA." And I just thought, this might be the best compliment anyone's ever given to me. So I'm still in that stage where I want to be the dad that my kids think I am. So I still have got one person who thinks I might still be able to make it to the NBA. So joking
Hold on, real
aside,
quick.
I think that,
Let's dive down in that. Everybody that listens knows that I love rabbit holes and tangents and everything. So whenever you compare your hoops game to some basketball players out there, are you more of an outside shooter? I get the play-by-play updates every week, every other week, but for the half dozen to half a million listeners that are still with us at this point in time in the episode, would you say you're a slasher, you're a post player, 3-point bomber?
yeah. So I'm 6'1" on my driver's license, and I was standing up really, really tall when they took that picture. So I'm still a pretty small guy out there. So I would say I'm a perimeter player who, when I catch fire from 3, I can knock them down. I can knock down the open shot for sure. But that frees up that slash game. I do like the dribble, drive, and kick. So I can hit the outside shot, open up those lanes, and then be able to free up a guy like you, who strikes me as a little bit more like you got a little bit more low post game. I can find you in the paint a little bit. So we got to get together. Next time I'm out in Pittsburgh, I'll bring my shoes. You bring the ball.
Yep, I am ready for it, and we have multiple places to play. So back to our scheduled programming, Jesse. Upon completion of school, where did you take your talents? Talk to us a little bit about that first position.
Yeah. So again, like many college students, have the degree, have the 4 years, and not a ton of real world experience. And so my first job actually was I did the AmeriCorps VISTA program, which was essentially like a domestic Peace Corps. And so did a year of volunteer service. I really wasn't volunteer. I mean, we were paid a small stipend, but for me, it was a little bit of a will work for experience type of thing. Didn't necessarily have the vision or the chops, quite honestly, to dive right into career aspirations. So took that year, AmeriCorps Vista, kind of a payback service to the community. Worked at the Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston, Cambridge Multi-Service Center, which is essentially this collection of human service entities, right? Housing, mental health services, and ultimately the agency that I was helping to run was an employment service.
Yeah.
And what was really striking about that was when I looked at the suite of services that were available for those individuals that had some significant challenges. There were food insecurity and homelessness and mental health and addiction. But the one thing that was sort of a commonality across the thousands of people that we served over those 2 years was if I could get a good job, a stable job that could pay the bills, it felt like everything else we could figure out, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't mean that that was the silver bullet. It just meant that that was the one theme, was this idea of a good job. And that really was the impetus to what I'm doing now, which is workforce development. I think deep down, Pete, I still have that heart of a social worker, right? Like the hands-on, face-to-face interactions with real humans who are looking to get that job or that next step along their career pathway. And I think while my day-to-day functions is not on the front line of employment services in my role at SCPA Works, it's that heart of a social worker or a human services worker that I think always sticks with me. So I took so much from that first job. I think I made $10,000 that year living in Boston, which I don't even know
You're
if is
about to
humanly
retire.
possible.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. And met my wife at that job as well, so that was maybe the biggest blessing. So
Priceless. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about what is workforce development. We hear about WIBs, we hear about these other, kind of initiatives, opportunities, agencies, firms. What does that mean and maybe you can even break it up on a like state, local, national level.
yeah, workforce development is a phrase that's used a lot, and it can mean a lot of different things. I mean, I think at the highest level, workforce development is this idea that all humans have potential. There is dignity in work, and there is a lifelong learning pathway for individuals. And so it's the development of humans in the skills, knowledge, and abilities and education for competing in an ever-changing labor market. The other way to think about workforce development is for a recent college graduate, let's say she graduates, she's 22 years old, the likelihood that she won't need some sort of learning, training, development, professional education, continuing education over her 40-year career is like 0%, right? So there needs to be an agility and a resilience and a development in learning. At the federal level, or at sort of like the public workforce system level, there is sort of national level investments, primarily through things like the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, those public dollars that fund the American Job Center system, which is one of many components of the larger workforce development system. Community colleges have a big role to play, career and technical education, as well as private corporations who are investing billions of dollars a year across the country in developing their own workforce. So our role is at SCP Works, is to try to play a connector and a convener role, get private industry to tell us what they're really looking for, what pain points they have, be able to leverage public dollars and be able to align that with industry standards, right? We don't want to just train people and hope that they get jobs. We want to reverse engineer this. Industry
Yeah.
tell us what you need, and then let us do the public-private partnership to align that as best as possible.
So if I'm somebody that's, maybe coming out of high school, college is maybe yes for me, maybe not for me. Maybe I just came out of college. Maybe I'm, 10 years into my career. When am I going to go to a workforce development group? At what point am I in trouble? Do I have a job, not have a job? Can I do it proactively? Is it only reactive? What does that look like? And how can we spread that message a little bit for workforce development groups across the country?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll give you two answers. The first is primarily the public workforce system with workforce development boards such as SCPA Works. The historical and primary way that people utilize the system is usually when they're unemployed and they're looking for that job placement. That's been
Mhm.
sort of the traditional and historical way that the public workforce system seeks to serve the community. What we're trying to do, and I think we're doing it to a pretty successful degree, is be able to take the infrastructure that those federal dollars bring to us to support those employment and training services for the unemployed, and be able to leverage that and expand our impact across the community for a broader set of demographics.
Yeah.
Exactly to some of the points you meant: upskill, reskill, the ability to sort of, let's say a plant or a factory is thinking about downsizing. How can we proactively bring some rapid response in there to upskill or reskill those affected workers for other industries that are hiring, right? So we're increasingly moving into that. Even the population that's being displaced by a lot of the digital equity or digital divide work, right? So the changes in digital implementation are changing rapidly, right? So how do we sort of work with companies and individuals in that way? So we're doing that through public-private partnerships, raising private and philanthropic dollars, and it gives us more latitude, pardon the pun, to be able
Good there.
to affect and impact more people across our community.
So we're going to educate and bring awareness and help fill the needs of the future. Before we get back to your career map specifically and some of the 5 dimensions, talk to us about some of the skills and opportunities, even just in our region, right? South Central PA. What's needed in these parts? You could even span across the state if you want to, but where do we see the gaps coming in the future?
So one of the ways that I like to answer this question or frame it up is there are many things that will change, but there's a lot of things that won't change over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of opportunity. And I think sometimes with the perspective of how much is changing and how much is up in the air for industry, it's helpful sometimes to think about the areas that won't change. And we like to think about this in terms of digital and durable skills. There are tremendous opportunities on the digital side. That's not just computer programming, software, DevOps, although there's plenty of those jobs growing. It is Industry 4.0 in manufacturing. It's smart manufacturing facilities that are using Internet of Things, AI, machine learning to rapidly prototype, develop, and produce the many, many things that South Central Pennsylvania produces. We're also the snack capital of the world, too. So I'm sure they're using AI and machine learning to make better potato chips, right? But it's the whole thing, right? So manufacturing is in our DNA. So it's the digital skills around some of that. Quick anecdote: we are the Keystone State. And if anyone's driven through Central Pennsylvania recently, whether it's 83 or 78 or the Turnpike, there are warehouses everywhere. Now, it used to be with these million square foot warehouses that you would need about 500 to 800 manual laborers per warehouse, right? Pickers, packers, material movers. Now you'll see a million square foot warehouse and they need to hire 100 people. And
Wow.
those 100 people are, technologists. They're people that understand how to, sort of troubleshoot Internet of things, sort of smart manufacturing facilities, AI, robotics, et cetera. So that gives you a sense of the digital skills embedded in things like logistics and manufacturing. But on the durable skills, back to our conversation at the beginning, problem solving, critical thinking, leadership skills, the ability to listen well, those are skills that will always be in demand. We're seeing the
Yeah.
intersection of those digital and durable skills. And so if you have either or both of those, there are a tremendous number of opportunities: healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, and IT across our region.
So, Jesse, as you go through the Pathfinders book, right, we talk about career maps and we talk about personal board of advisors. You've shared with us a couple of the positions, right, some of the titles that you've had in the past up to this point. You talked a little bit about some of the digital and durable skills that you've developed. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about, was there any other certifications or education that you did? Any other achievements that kind of helped you go from here to the next thing? Maybe talk a little bit about those for some of the audience with the lens of, as I'm planning out how to advance my career, I can't just always say, hey, it's been, 13 and a half months, the clock's ticking, I automatically get the next step, but how you helped build along the way.
Yeah, it's a great question. And if this rambles, you just
I'll cut
cut
you
me
off.
off.
Don't worry.
So I think after those 2 years of VISTA, I recognized that while I loved the social work, I actually wanted to do more of the management, leadership, public policy. I wanted to be at maybe 30,000 foot in terms of tackling some of these community challenges. That was when I realized I needed a master's degree. So I went
Yeah.
back, got a master's in public administration. That was the best decision I could have made in terms of education and achievements. I am still reaping the rewards 14 years later of that almost on a day-to-day basis, right? And that is everything from financial analysis, operational analysis, to just management, right? Like almost like a B school for the public sector, right? So that was a big learning curve in terms of work, but it was a huge achievement, I think. I did a couple certificate programs, strategic execution, sort of the idea of going from, that position to actually the CEO of SCP Works. I realized running a company was not something that I had a playbook on, right? So I
Right.
needed sort of those shorter term certificates. I find those really helpful, particularly because there's such a plethora of opportunities and content out there to be able to identify a short term, highly intensive cohort based learning was great for me. But I think the bigger thing, even more than the formal education, was the mentors, the
Yep.
leaders, the personal board of advisors that essentially took me under their wing and said, here's what you need to do. Or just even giving me a sounding board to bounce some ideas off of. And so while the education is phenomenal, and the ongoing learning is important, it was that PBA. Um, I didn't refer to it as a PBA 10, 15 years ago, but that's essentially what it was that I found to be the most valuable.
So the OJT, the MSMA, BSBA, and PBA, we got as many letters as you could imagine. And actually, it would be really interesting to see if we could put together some kind of paragraph with every letter in the alphabet for some acronyms, the A through Z of this, that, the other thing. But you talked about the PBA, Personal Board of Advisors. Talk to us a little bit about who were, you mentioned your dad earlier on the session today. Who were some of the first advisors on your personal board that helped guide you, and then build on how that kind of changed over time? Maybe some people stayed, maybe some people, went in and out of the board. Talk to us about your board over time.
Yeah, I think I am really, really thankful to say my dad has really always been on that and continues to be so, which is just continues to be a great source of wisdom and guidance. Again, teaching me to love learning and to be adaptive, I think is an element of that PBA that is I still hold really dear. So I definitely include my dad. Dropped off in Boston, 22 years old at the VISTA program. A mentor of mine named Larry was really by my side the whole time. And it was really cool about this, and Pete, you can probably attest to this, is a PBA does not sit there and just congratulate you on every sort of step of the journey. I needed to be called out, right?
Right.
I was demonstrating some desire to grow in my personal professional life, but was also starting to make some missteps. And Larry, in a very wonderful way, kind of called me out. I remember a phone call with him and said, "Hey, I know you're better than this. I want you to step up and actually do what you're called to do." He said it in a different way, but essentially in a very encouraging way. As a PBA, the accountability was there. So Larry, for years, right, was a great source of encouragement, but also would call me out when I started to veer off of the career journey. Kirsten Lodel was the CEO of a Lyft, and that was again one of those first jobs out of college, and that was the organization that I was placed at during that VISTA program, right? So really, really important couple years. She exemplified strong leadership, human kindness and compassion, but visionary, right? I really caught her vision for where the organization needed to go, and I thought that she just exemplified that. So I was able to learn a lot from her and sort of bounce some great ideas off of her early in my career. And then probably one more, Pete, would be the individual that I actually ended up taking over for as CEO of SCPA Works, Kevin Perkey. He just an incredible mentor of mine. Again, showed me the way to lead with strength, with some grit and some resilience, right? So just being able to bounce ideas off of him. And so industry specific, right? Kevin, how would you handle this? Or what would you do here? Very few people in the world knows what it likes to run a workforce board. Kevin did. And so I think that was a really helpful, very specific element of that personal board of advisors. So yeah, it kind of runs the gamut. And it's not something you can necessarily manufacture, but I think if you're looking for it, Pete, and you have a mind, which is what Pathfinders lays out, you're able to see, I need to bring this person in for the encouragement, for the accountability, and for the vision.
Yeah, and it's, you might not always need every single board member every single day, but to early and often communicate what you're all about and where do you want to go, and have some, a couple of checkpoints along the way so that they can bring you back onto your path that you're supposed to be on. You might be on a path, but are you on your path, right? We get into the SMARTY goals, making sure that they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, and yours. Sometimes we do the copy and paste thing to get a plan together, and we forget to edit and make those uniquely our own. Jesse, you talked a little bit about the actions that you can take with your board, and you talked about how these people were guiding you. My question is, how did you always make time to get some guidance from these individuals? And now you in multiple leadership roles, how do you make, with the the budding basketball team at the house, how do you make time to keep learning and to also keep teaching and guiding?
It's interesting. We talked about this recently, and it was a particularly busy week, I think, for both of us. And I think we both left that meeting that you and I had, Pete, of there's a lot to do, there's a lot we're getting accomplished. But one of the things that put the fuel back in our tank, so to speak, was being able to have a really authentic, genuine conversation with somebody to provide the feedback, the mentorship, and it really grounded the work that we do in the human element. And to me, I go through a week or two or three, and I don't have those mentorship check-ins. I'm not reaching out and trying to be a connector for my network that may be looking for work, or I know they're struggling with a professional challenge and I haven't reached out to them. I do that and I immediately feel like my cup is full again. Then I realize it's not that I have time for it, is that I don't have the time to not do that. And so what I've learned slowly, I think very, very slowly, is I need to build that into my regular weekly cadence. In fact, on my to-do list this week is be a better connector, build a network for good, and make 5 intros to 2 people who are looking for work right now. So that's literally part of my weekly to-do list, is to be proactive in thinking, how can I be a connector for my network in a positive way?
Yeah, and make sure tag me on that one so that we can continue, connecting others. Because, and hey, folks, as you're listening to this one, go back to the post and say, hey, Jesse, are there other people that we can connect for you? And also give him some accountability and say, Jesse, when's the last time you did some of that connecting to the other folks? And if you're listening and looking for a job up to this piece, and you just so happen to be at some part of Pennsylvania, well, guess what? You're just serving up an alley-oop to Jesse to help connect the dots, myself as well. So action item to the listeners that are still here. Jesse, we're more than at the halfway point, marathon terms, in the session today. Let's talk a little bit now about the Pathfinders methodology, right? So career map, personal board. We've talked about it in your experience up to this point, but now let's break it down, the value to an individual, right? Let's say, hey, I'm a early career, mid-career. How's this going to help me? And then the second part of it is help an organization, right? You've worked with tons of organizations across the country, probably some internationally too. But let's talk about Pathfinders methodology, right? It feeds into some of the work that we do at Latitude. So giving you the latitude to talk about the values in each side.
Yeah, there is so much value here. And with limited time, I will probably again ramble. You know how to cut me off. The first, on the business side, employers are faced with, I think, a structural change in the labor market. There are, in the long term, I think there will be more job openings and more job potential openings. There will be individuals to fill those jobs long term. Yeah. And so because of that, the power dynamic has shifted, I think, a little bit, notably and significantly, to the worker. What that means is it's incumbent upon companies to provide pathways either up, or those workers will go out, right? So we call it like the new up or out. Give your workers a pathway up, or they're going to find another opportunity. And so it really becomes a sort of a triple bottom line. Not is it just the potential of losing really, really good employees, but keeping employees because you have shown a really, really clear pathway but then also resources to be able to support them. And that includes something like Latitude and the mentorship, those touch points that really are meaningful. So on the employer side, they can't afford not to do this. They can't afford not to invest. It will pay so many dividends. And really kind of the battle for talent will be contingent upon not just pay and purpose, but also pathways, right? I think those three P's are really critical. On the individual side, we know the pathway through high school. We know the AP courses that you take. We know even potentially the pathway to get to college. And then you graduate from college. But then once you're in the real world, Pete, there's not a playbook for how to invest in yourself, right? So the idea of human potential is embedded in every part of the American dream, but there's no real playbook for that. If I'm at a company, I've never been here before. I don't know where to go for resources, for pathways, for the opportunities to grow. And so I think it really speaks to the idea of equipping individuals to give them a vision, the art of the possible. Yeah. Here's where you could be, Jesse, in 5 years, and here are the steps that you can take year by year. And I think it's catching that vision that a lot of American workers today don't have. And if they had it, there would be so much more motivation and encouragement for that lifelong learning and that growth. So it's so critical. And it's not just the promotion and the pay. I do want to emphasize that it is the aspirational side of here's what I've always wanted to do. I just don't know how to get there. And this is, I think what you're working on is speaking exactly to that, both for the worker and for the employer.
Put together a little bit of a plan. Hey, here's where I want to get to, and the what, and then being able to share it with a couple of other individuals, bouncing those ideas off them. And just think about, Jesse, how much easier is it if I come to you with this career map that you're able to noodle on and look at and comment on before our conversation, so that, you might have even, had a chance to comment, okay, hey, Pete, on this couple of career map future steps, have you thought about this, thought about this, thought about that, as I'm building these things out on that career map document? And then I might go over to somebody else on my board. I go to Jeffrey, I go to Sean, I go to, Alexa, and they provide guidance and perspective on a different part of my career map. So it's that piece of, hey, we're not alone in all of this. And you're able to you have to be a self-starter, right? That's a very important piece. But success is possible.
It is. I think your point about being a self-starter is really good, because I think my hunch is that most people actually are self-starters if given the vision, the pathway, and the resources to do so. And I think a lot of people aren't, or don't actually articulate that because they're searching. They don't have that pathway or that PBA to bounce ideas off of. Given that, I think a lot of people actually will be self-starters to say, now that I've caught the vision about what's possible, now I'm all in. And I think that to me, that the human potential element of this is one of the most exciting elements of it.
And that goes back to, what do workforce development boards actually do? And it's unlocking that human potential. Jesse, I'm going to get ready to do a quick recap of our conversation today, but do you have one kind of piece of advice or a bit of guidance for our listeners here?
Yeah, I think for those that are still seeking direction, it's never too late to start, and it's never too late to start again. And that kind of goes back to the quote of best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is right now. And I think a lot of times people get hung up on, it's too late, I'm too far in my career. I've gone too far to invest now. And I would challenge that, right? It's never too late to start. It's never too late to start again in reinventing oneself and identifying the pathways, the pay and the purpose, and the whole Pathfinders model, I think, is in alignment with that. So just an encouragement for those that feel like they're too far gone or too late in the game. It's never too late to start again.
What was it that Colonel Sanders, the KFC guy, he didn't start until he was in his 60s or something, right? Yep. And, last I checked, whether you're a KFC fan or not, it's a brand that has grown and everybody recognizes it.
It's a great, 60, what can you do at 60, right? And create an iconic brand. And that's,
I don't know if he's going to be running. I don't know if he'll be running an ultra marathon, but hey, so let's get into this. So Jesse McCree, thank you very much. The workforce development wonder, starting off as a quirky runner, that had interstellar dreams of astronaut aspirations to hoop star and then legal detective actually became an advocate as government and legal studies major in college. He retained some of those law school tendencies, coupled with dad's lesson of learn how to love learning, communicate well, and always remain hungry and humble throughout. This perimeter player on the court transitioned into the phase of will work for experience with AmeriCorps VISTA in Boston. The focus was on employment services, and that's where his workforce experience really took off to a new level. And the heart of a champion was harnessed into the heart of a human services worker there. All humans have potential, there's dignity for all, and how do we help people compete is something that stayed on Jesse's mind throughout. Historically serving the unemployed, the workforce development organizations are now moving towards a proactive public-private partnership to bring awareness and fill the gaps needed for today and the future. I loved your take on the focus of digital and durable skills. You loved your grad school experience and coupled that with some certifications, OJT, and your PBA, where you gave a thanks to Larry for the accountability and recalibration. Kristen being the visionary, and learn how to lead with strength and grit from Kevin at the Wib. Mentorship check-ins were great, refilling your cup along the way, and shared that you don't have time not to do it. And that's something that employers should also encourage. They don't have time not to do this investment in their people. So they can leverage that Pathfinders methodology and the Latitude offering to help guide employees up, over, and around, but not out. And the pathway really helps. Mentorship focused on guidance and given them a little bit of a structure so that pay, purpose, and pathways can become a reality. On the individual side, it was the self-guided playbook that really set things apart and, helping people remember that the art of the possible is within reach. So Jesse, thank you for your love of learning, inspiring others, and bringing vision, pathways, and resources to our region and our nation.
Pete, thank you. That was pure poetry, by the way. I got to hire you for my marketing. So no, it was a great conversation. Thanks so much for having me on today, Pete.
Thanks, Jesse.